Silence is often judged as weakness because people are taught that strength must be loud, defensive, and visible. Yet many forget that the deepest battles are fought within, where dignity struggles to survive disappointment and exhaustion. When conflict repeats itself without resolution, the heart begins to understand that staying sometimes causes more damage than leaving. The one who walks away quietly is rarely indifferent. Instead, they are protecting the last pieces of peace still alive inside them. Avoidant regret appears later because memories return, asking whether more effort could have changed the ending. But constant confrontation rarely heals wounds. It often deepens them until love turns into resentment. Silence, then, becomes the final boundary, the refusal to let chaos rewrite one's character. Walking away without dramatic words denies conflict the satisfaction of another fight and leaves both sides facing their own reflections. This quiet exit is not surrender, but preservation, an attempt to keep compassion intact when anger threatens to take control. Over time, silence forces truth to surface because absence reveals what presence concealed. The one who leaves chooses inner stability over temporary victory, even while carrying unanswered questions. Regret is natural because humans desire closure, yet closure cannot always be won through arguments. Sometimes the strongest message is delivered without speaking at all, allowing distance to teach lessons that heated exchanges never could. Silence becomes a statement that peace matters more than proving oneself right, and that protecting the soul is sometimes the bravest action a person can take. Still, the quiet departure carries emotional weight long after the moment has passed, because caring does not end simply because conflict becomes unbearable. Avoidant regret whispers in moments of solitude, wondering whether patience should have lasted longer or words should have been spoken differently. Yet one must remember how many attempts were already made before silence became the only remaining choice. Many who leave have already fought countless internal battles, trying to repair misunderstandings, hoping effort would be returned equally. Silence finally arrives when emotional exhaustion replaces hope, and staying begins to feel like self-betrayal. Walking away without revenge preserves respect that prolonged fighting would eventually destroy. Silence protects both individuals from saying words that cannot be taken back, words that leave scars deeper than separation itself. With time, reflection grows in the space left behind, and both sides begin to see what conflict prevented them from understanding. The quiet person is often the one who cared deeply, but refused to let care turn into self-destruction. Leaving without noise is not emotional absence, it is emotional discipline. Silence ensures that kindness survives even when connection fails, and that dignity remains untouched by chaos. Eventually, regret softens into wisdom, revealing that sometimes the most loving act is knowing when to step away, allowing both hearts the chance to grow beyond the pain they could not heal together. Many people misunderstand emotional withdrawal, assuming that the person who grows quiet simply does not care enough to stay engaged in conflict. In reality, silence often emerges after repeated efforts to communicate have failed, leaving the heart exhausted rather than indifferent. When arguments begin to repeat without progress, emotional fatigue replaces hope, and silence becomes the last refuge of someone who once tried very hard to be heard. Avoidant regret later appears because the mind replays those moments, wondering if different words or greater patience might have changed the outcome. Yet endless confrontation rarely produces understanding. It often creates deeper resentment. Silence, therefore, becomes a protective choice rather than an escape. The quiet departure shields both sides from further damage, preventing emotions from escalating into cruelty. Walking away without hostility allows dignity to survive even when connection does not. Over time, distance creates space for reflection that heated arguments never allowed. The absence of conflict forces individuals to confront their own roles in what went wrong. Silence denies emotional chaos the attention it feeds upon, leaving truth to rise gradually in its place. Although regret may question the decision, peace slowly grows where constant tension once existed. The person who leaves quietly is not running from responsibility, but refusing to participate in cycles that harm everyone involved. Silence becomes an unspoken message that emotional well-being matters more than winning disputes. In this quiet space, healing begins, because both hearts are finally free from the pressure to defend themselves and can instead begin to understand what conflict once concealed. Emotional exhaustion is rarely visible to outsiders, which is why silence is often mistaken for avoidance rather than survival. The one who steps back has usually endured many moments of disappointment, trying repeatedly to repair what kept breaking. When effort feels one-sided, hope gradually weakens, and silence becomes the final response of someone who no longer has strength to fight the same battle. Avoidant regret later emerges because emotional bonds do not disappear instantly. Memories continue to question whether things might have improved with more persistence. Yet persistence without mutual effort turns into self-neglect, slowly draining confidence and peace. Leaving quietly prevents anger from transforming affection into bitterness, preserving respect even when separation becomes necessary. Silence allows emotions to cool instead of exploding into words that cause permanent wounds. Over time, clarity replaces confusion, revealing that departure was not rejection but protection of inner stability. The quiet exit gives both individuals time to examine themselves without distraction, encouraging personal growth that arguments often block. Silence holds a powerful lesson. Not every conflict must be fought to the end. Sometimes strength lies in recognizing when continuing would only deepen pain. Regret may linger for a while, but eventually understanding arrives, showing that stepping away was not abandonment, but a courageous choice to protect emotional health while leaving room for future healing. Silence often hides the deepest emotions because not every feeling can survive the harsh environment of repeated conflict. The person who leaves quietly is frequently the one who felt the most, but realized that expressing those feelings no longer created understanding. When conversations become battles and explanations turn into accusations, silence appears not as indifference, but as emotional protection. Avoidant regret later grows in the quiet moments, when memories return and the heart wonders whether staying longer might have saved what was breaking. Yet sometimes words lose their power, and continuing to speak only multiplies misunderstanding. Silence becomes the last effort to prevent love from turning into resentment. Walking away does not mean that care disappeared. It means that continuing would have destroyed what little remained. The quiet exit preserves dignity and compassion, preventing anger from replacing empathy. Over time, distance reveals truths that arguments concealed, allowing both individuals to reflect without defensiveness. Silence gives space for wounds to cool instead of inflaming them with repeated confrontation. The one who leaves chooses emotional survival over endless struggle, even while carrying unanswered questions. Regret exists because attachment does not vanish immediately, but silence protects the heart from further damage. Eventually, absence communicates what words could not, and both sides begin to understand that departure was not neglect, but a final attempt to prevent greater pain. Silence becomes an invisible message that some battles cannot be won without losing oneself in the process. The pain of unspoken emotion lingers because silence carries all the words that could not find safe expression. Many assume that the quiet person lacked courage, yet often they possessed enough courage to step away before conflict destroyed their kindness. Avoidant regret surfaces when solitude allows memories to resurface, asking whether patience should have lasted longer or explanations should have been clearer. However, patience without change slowly becomes self-sacrifice, and silence emerges when the heart recognizes its limits. Leaving without hostility prevents emotional scars that harsh words often leave behind. Silence protects respect when arguments threaten to erase it completely. Over time, reflection replaces confusion, showing that departure was not abandonment, but recognition that continued struggle would only deepen suffering. The quiet departure forces both individuals to confront their own actions without distraction, creating opportunities for personal growth that arguments rarely permit. Silence becomes an act of emotional wisdom, preserving humanity when conflict invites cruelty. Regret gradually softens as clarity grows, revealing that stepping away was not weakness, but an effort to protect peace. In the end, silence teaches that caring deeply does not always mean staying forever. Sometimes it means knowing when leaving is the only way to preserve the compassion and dignity that conflict was slowly destroying. Conflict often creates an illusion of connection because emotional intensity can feel like proof that something still matters. Many people remain trapped in repeated arguments, believing that fighting shows commitment, yet constant confrontation slowly erodes trust and respect. Over time, disagreements stop being about solutions and become habits fueled by frustration and pride. The person who chooses silence and leaves interrupts this destructive cycle, even though their choice may be misunderstood. Avoidant regret later appears because unresolved conversations continue to echo in memory, asking whether another discussion might have changed the outcome. However, not every conflict can be solved through more debate. Sometimes distance is the only path to clarity. Silence forces both individuals to confront their own emotions without the distraction of ongoing arguments. Walking away quietly removes the emotional fuel that keeps conflict alive, allowing reflection to replace reaction. The quiet exit becomes an act of emotional discipline, choosing growth instead of repetition. Although attachment makes departure painful, silence offers the opportunity to rebuild inner stability that endless disputes gradually weaken. In absence, both people begin to recognize patterns that arguments once concealed, and understanding grows where confrontation failed. Silence does not erase care, it simply refuses to let care become toxic. Over time, regret softens into insight, revealing that leaving was not abandonment, but a refusal to participate in emotional chaos any longer. Silence ultimately teaches that peace sometimes requires breaking cycles that conversations alone cannot repair, even when the decision feels heavy at first. Emotional patterns often repeat because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty, even when that familiarity causes pain. Many remain in cycles of argument because conflict becomes predictable, and unpredictability feels frightening. The one who leaves quietly chooses uncertainty over continued emotional exhaustion, even while knowing regret may follow. Avoidant regret surfaces later because humans naturally question choices that lead to separation, especially when memories still carry warmth alongside pain. Yet silence creates space for personal accountability, something constant fighting rarely allows. When confrontation stops, each person must face their own role in the breakdown without blaming the other. Leaving without dramatic confrontation preserves dignity that ongoing conflict might destroy. Silence prevents small misunderstandings from becoming permanent emotional wounds. Over time, clarity replaces confusion as both individuals gain distance from emotional intensity. The quiet departure becomes a turning point where personal growth becomes possible again. Silence protects compassion when anger threatens to replace it completely. Regret may linger for a while, but eventually, understanding emerges, showing that departure was not avoidance, but a courageous decision to end a pattern that harmed everyone involved. Silence reminds us that not all connections survive through persistence alone. Sometimes survival requires stepping away so that both individuals can rediscover themselves beyond the noise of endless disagreement. There is an important difference between running away from responsibility and choosing peace after genuine effort has been exhausted. Many people assume that silence means surrender, yet in reality, quiet departure often follows repeated attempts to repair misunderstandings and restore harmony. The one who leaves rarely does so suddenly. They reach that decision after enduring disappointment, trying again and again to make things work. Avoidant regret later arises because the heart remembers how much energy was invested, questioning whether one more attempt could have changed everything. However, continuing to fight when nothing improves slowly destroys self-respect. Silence then becomes a final boundary, protecting emotional well-being from further damage. Walking away without anger or revenge preserves dignity that prolonged conflict would eventually erase. Silence communicates that peace is more valuable than proving oneself right. Over time, distance allows emotional wounds to settle, replacing chaos with reflection. The quiet exit denies conflict, another opportunity to deepen resentment. Regret appears because attachment does not disappear immediately, but silence offers the space needed for healing to begin. The person who chooses peace over confrontation shows emotional maturity, understanding that constant struggle weakens both individuals. Silence ensures that compassion remains intact instead of turning into bitterness. Eventually, understanding replaces doubt, revealing that departure was not abandonment, but an act of self-preservation. Silence teaches that relationships cannot survive on effort from only one side, and that protecting one's inner balance is sometimes the most responsible decision, even when the heart wishes things had ended differently. Still, regret often lingers because emotional bonds leave lasting impressions that do not fade easily. Even when leaving was necessary, memories return with questions about what could have been saved. Avoidant regret grows in moments of solitude, when the mind revisits conversations and wonders whether patience should have lasted longer. Yet many forget how long they endured before silence became their final response. Emotional endurance has limits, and when those limits are crossed, staying becomes self-neglect rather than commitment. Silence then becomes an act of self-respect, protecting the heart from further disappointment. Walking away quietly prevents anger from replacing kindness, allowing both individuals to part without destroying the respect they once shared. Over time, reflection clarifies that continued effort without mutual understanding only prolongs suffering. Silence creates distance necessary for personal growth, allowing each person to rediscover emotional stability. The quiet departure becomes a turning point where healing begins, even if regret initially clouds that understanding. Silence reminds us that peace cannot grow where constant tension exists. Eventually, regret softens into wisdom, showing that choosing personal well-being was not selfish, but necessary. Leaving without hostility preserves dignity and compassion, ensuring that although the connection ended, humanity remained intact, allowing both hearts the chance to heal and grow beyond the conflict that once held them captive. Silence carries a unique power because it allows truth to surface without being buried under emotional noise. During conflict, people often speak to defend themselves rather than to understand each other, and arguments become contests of pride instead of paths to resolution. When one person chooses silence and steps away, the constant exchange of accusations finally stops, leaving space for reflection. Avoidant regret later arises because unanswered questions linger, creating doubt about whether leaving was premature. Yet, silence provides something arguments rarely offer: Time to see reality clearly. Walking away quietly removes the distractions of confrontation, allowing both individuals to recognize their own mistakes without immediate defensiveness. Silence denies conflict the attention it depends upon, forcing emotions to settle rather than escalate. In that quiet space, people often realize what they could not see while fighting. The one who leaves is not escaping responsibility but allowing understanding to grow naturally instead of being forced through pressure. Regret may question the decision at first, but over time clarity replaces confusion. Silence preserves dignity by preventing emotional reactions that might later cause shame or remorse. The absence of noise becomes a teacher, revealing patterns of behavior that arguments kept hidden. Walking away ensures wounds are not reopened repeatedly, allowing healing to begin instead of prolonging pain. Silence communicates that not every battle deserves participation, and that protecting inner peace sometimes requires stepping back. Eventually, reflection leads to insight, showing that quiet departure was not weakness, but wisdom, offering both individuals a chance to grow beyond the conflict that once consumed them. With time, silence transforms from something painful into something meaningful, because distance often reveals truths that constant closeness obscures. Avoidant regret initially feels heavy because emotional ties do not disappear instantly, and memories continue to question whether staying might have produced a better ending. Yet silence creates opportunities for personal accountability, something heated exchanges rarely allow. When confrontation ends, each person must examine their own role in the breakdown instead of blaming the other. Walking away without drama prevents conflict from escalating into permanent emotional scars. Silence protects respect when arguments threaten to destroy it completely. Over time, emotional clarity replaces confusion, and individuals begin to understand what truly mattered and what simply fed their pride. The quiet departure becomes a turning point where growth becomes possible again. Silence also protects compassion, ensuring that disappointment does not transform into cruelty. Regret gradually softens as understanding develops, revealing that departure was not abandonment, but recognition that continued fighting would only deepen suffering. Silence reminds us that sometimes emotional maturity requires choosing peace over persistence. Leaving quietly allows both hearts the chance to heal, learn, and rediscover themselves beyond the pain of conflict. In the end, silence does not erase the past, but it offers the wisdom needed to move forward with dignity, preserving humanity where endless argument might have destroyed it. Silence often becomes the final protection for the part of the soul that conflict slowly threatens to harden. During intense disagreements, people sometimes become versions of themselves they later regret, speaking in anger and forgetting the compassion that once held them together. The one who chooses to leave quietly often recognizes this danger and steps away before emotional damage becomes permanent. Avoidant regret later appears because unfinished emotions remain, raising questions about whether staying and fighting longer might have saved the connection. Yet silence prevents words spoken in frustration from creating wounds that never fully heal. Walking away without shouting preserves respect that continuous confrontation would eventually destroy. Silence guards empathy when anger begins to replace understanding, ensuring that kindness survives even when relationships do not. Over time, distance cools emotional intensity, allowing both individuals to reflect on what truly happened rather than reacting in the heat of the moment. The quiet departure becomes an act of emotional courage, choosing restraint instead of reaction. Regret may linger because attachment does not disappear immediately, but silence protects the heart from becoming bitter. In absence, people begin to see their own mistakes more clearly, something constant arguments rarely allow. Silence becomes a shield that keeps humanity intact when conflict invites cruelty. Eventually, understanding replaces doubt, revealing that leaving was not abandonment, but a decision to protect one's inner peace. Silence teaches that sometimes the bravest act is not to win the argument, but to walk away before conflict destroys the compassion both people once shared. Emotional restraint requires strength that often goes unnoticed because society praises confrontation more than quiet wisdom. Many believe fighting proves commitment, yet constant battles can slowly erode respect and turn affection into hostility. The person who steps away silently chooses to protect their emotional integrity rather than participate in escalating conflict. Avoidant regret later surfaces because memories still carry warmth alongside pain, making separation feel uncertain at first. However, silence prevents anger from shaping final memories, allowing dignity to survive where conflict might have left only resentment. Walking away quietly ensures that emotions cool instead of exploding into words that permanently damage trust. Over time, reflection replaces confusion, revealing lessons hidden beneath emotional turmoil. Silence allows individuals to grow beyond the roles conflict forced them into, rediscovering their calmer selves. The quiet departure also encourages both sides to examine their actions without distraction, creating opportunities for personal growth. Regret gradually fades as clarity develops, showing that stepping away preserved kindness that ongoing fighting would have destroyed. Silence reminds us that protecting compassion sometimes requires distance, even when emotions remain strong. Leaving without hostility demonstrates emotional maturity, ensuring that although the relationship ended, humanity remained intact. In the end, silence becomes proof that peace is sometimes achieved not by winning battles, but by choosing not to fight them at all, allowing both hearts the chance to heal beyond the conflict that once overshadowed their connection. Silence often marks the beginning of personal transformation because some endings are necessary for emotional growth. When conflict repeatedly disrupts peace, individuals eventually realize that holding on can sometimes cause more harm than letting go. The person who leaves quietly is not always giving up. They may be choosing a future where emotional stability becomes possible again. Avoidant regret later arises because memories still carry meaning, making separation feel uncertain at first. Yet, silence allows those memories to settle without turning into bitterness. Walking away without revenge or blame preserves dignity that prolonged conflict might destroy. Silence communicates emotional maturity, showing that inner peace matters more than proving oneself right. Over time, distance reveals lessons hidden beneath emotional chaos, allowing both individuals to grow beyond misunderstandings. The quiet departure becomes a turning point where personal identity begins to rebuild itself outside the shadow of constant disagreement. Regret may question the decision temporarily, but reflection gradually reveals that leaving created space for healing that staying could not provide. Silence protects compassion when repeated arguments threaten to erase it. Absence often teaches what presence could not, because reflection grows where emotional pressure once dominated. The one who chooses silence does not erase the past, but carries forward the lessons learned. Eventually, understanding replaces confusion, showing that departure was not failure, but the beginning of a new emotional chapter. Silence reminds us that growth sometimes requires stepping away from situations that once felt essential, allowing both hearts to discover paths that lead toward greater peace and emotional maturity. With time, silence transforms pain into wisdom because distance offers clarity that emotional intensity often hides. Avoidant regret initially feels heavy because attachments do not disappear instantly, and memories continue to question whether another attempt might have changed the ending. However, silence allows emotional wounds to heal without being reopened by constant confrontation. Walking away quietly gives both individuals the opportunity to rediscover themselves beyond conflict, encouraging personal responsibility rather than blame. Silence prevents emotional exhaustion from turning into resentment, preserving respect even after separation. Over time, clarity replaces doubt as individuals recognize how conflict shaped their behavior and emotions. The quiet departure becomes an important step toward emotional independence, where self-worth no longer depends on unresolved struggles. Regret gradually softens as personal growth reveals that some connections serve as lessons rather than lifelong journeys.